It was meant to be the happiest day of their lives. Chike, a hard-working young man from Owerri, had spent months preparing for his wedding, determined to give his bride the kind of day she would never forget. He had labored under the sun to save every naira, cutting corners on his own needs so Adaora could have her dream dress, the perfect venue, and a celebration that would bring both families honor. Adaora, his bride-to-be, was radiant. Her laughter lit up the room as her bridesmaids teased her, fussing over her hair and veil. She had chosen delicate lace with tiny beadwork that shimmered whenever she moved. Her family was busy with the final touches, her mother checking the catering, her father proudly supervising the decorators as colorful flowers and drapes transformed the hall into something magical. The scent of fresh jollof rice and peppered meat drifted from the kitchen, mingling with the music of high-life songs blasting from rehearsing band members. Children chased each other around the compound, giggling, while elders exchanged blessings, their faces glowing with pride. The grand wedding cake stood tall, 5 tiers of artistry, waiting for its moment of glory. Friends from far and wide had already begun arriving dressed in vibrant aso ebi, their laughter filling the air. The village buzzed with excitement. After all, a wedding was more than just 2 people uniting. It was a celebration for everyone. All eyes were on Chike and Adaora, the couple who seemed destined for happiness. Everyone was waiting for the celebration, completely unaware of the shadow looming just beyond their joy. On the morning before the wedding, Chike stepped out to run a simple errand. The sun was bright, the streets alive with the noise of traders setting up their stalls, children playing, and neighbors calling cheerful greetings. Chike moved with the lightness of a man whose future was certain, smiling, his heart full of excitement for the life waiting just a day ahead. But joy can turn to tragedy in the blink of an eye. From somewhere in the crowd, a sudden shout pierced the air. The word carried like fire through dry grass. "Thief!" Heads turned sharply, voices rose, and confusion rippled through the street. In that instant, everything changed. The people didn't ask questions, they didn't pause. Their eyes shifted toward Chike, and suspicion fell on him like a curse. The crowd gathered with terrifying speed, voices rising like a storm. Some shouted in rage, others demanded punishment. Chike raised his hands, his voice trembling as he pleaded, trying to explain. He opened his small bag for all to see. Inside were only simple things, the ordinary items of a man preparing for his wedding. Nothing stolen, nothing strange. But no one cared. No one listened. The noise drowned out his words. Fingers pointed at him, harsh and accusing. Strangers who had never met him before decided his fate in seconds. Phones were raised, recording every moment, feeding the fire of suspicion. In minutes, he was no longer Chike the groom-to-be. He was branded a thief, surrounded by a mob eager for blood. A lie had taken root, and it was spreading like wildfire. The mob descended like a wave of fury. Rough hands dragged Chike to the ground, his bag scattering into the dirt, its contents ignored. Feet kicked, fists struck, and voices shouted for vengeance. He cried out, pleading for mercy, but his words were drowned beneath the roar of the crowd. His clothes tore as they pulled and beat him, his body bruised under the weight of their anger. From the edge of the chaos, Adaora burst through, her bridal veil still in hand, her voice breaking as she screamed his name. She clawed at strangers, fell to her knees beside him, begging them to see reason, to remember his face, his goodness, his innocence. But rage is louder than love. Rage is blinder than truth. Her cries became part of the noise, swallowed by the frenzy. Then came the kerosene. Someone uncapped the container, its sharp smell filling the air as liquid splashed across his torn clothes. Chike's eyes widened in terror, his lips quivering in prayer. Adaora clung to him, her tears soaking his chest, but a hand struck her away. A match was raised high. For one eternal heartbeat, the world held its breath, and then fire roared to life. The flames swallowed him whole. In seconds, the man who only dreamed of love, of a home, of a future with Adaora, was burning alive. His screams tore through the air, mixing with the crackle of fire and the shouts of the mob. The smell of smoke and burning flesh filled the street, forcing even the boldest to cover their noses. Some stood horrified, their anger suddenly cooling into fear. Others cheered, convinced they had delivered justice. Many simply held up their phones, recording his death like it was entertainment. Through it all, Adaora knelt in the dirt, her hands stretched helplessly toward the fire. Her cries cut through the chaos, a sound of grief so raw it shook even the children watching from doorways. She called his name again and again, but her voice could not reach him. Chike's body writhed, then weakened, then stilled as the fire consumed him. His life, his dreams, his tomorrow, carried away in smoke and ash. And when the flames finally died, silence fell. The crowd that had screamed for blood now stood in uneasy stillness, staring at what they had done. The ashes smoldered where a groom should have stood. The wedding feast remained untouched, the hall decorated in vain. In that silence, the truth settled heavy on every heart. An innocent man was gone forever, taken not by fate, but by the hands of his own people. Moments later, the police arrived, sirens wailing through the air. But they were too late. In their custody was the real thief, the true criminal, still clutching the very phone that had sparked the chaos. The crowd froze. A suffocating silence spread as realization sank in. Some dropped their cameras. Others lowered their heads in shame. Mothers wept. Fathers muttered prayers. But it no longer mattered. The damage had been done. Chike, the innocent groom who should have been standing at the altar, was gone forever. His dreams turned to ashes before their eyes. What remained was not just grief, but the haunting weight of guilt, a reminder of how quickly suspicion can destroy a life. The next day, the wedding hall stood in silence, a painful shadow of what was meant to be. Rows of chairs were still neatly arranged, waiting for guests who would never arrive. The scent of food lingered in the air, untouched, while the towering cake, 5 tiers of beauty, stood like a cruel reminder, mocking the celebration that never came. Flowers that should have witnessed laughter and dancing now drooped in sorrow. Adaora, still in her bridal robe, could not bring herself to change. Her veil lay crumpled on the floor as she wept uncontrollably in her parents' arms. The sound of her cries echoed through the house, each sob tearing at the hearts of all who heard. What should have been a day of joy, of music, of promises made before God and man, had been swallowed by tragedy. Instead of dancing, there was mourning. Instead of celebration, there was grief. The dream of a future had been stolen, leaving only emptiness in its place. Adaora, now dressed in black, stood alone, tears streaming down her face as she clutched his photo tightly to her chest. Every heartbeat felt like a memory slipping away. She couldn't let go, no matter how much she wanted to. Around her, friends and family watched in silence, their faces heavy with understanding. Everyone who knew the story felt her pain, sensing the depth of the loss she carried. In that moment, her sorrow spoke louder than words ever could. The video of Chike's death spread online, watched by thousands, debated by strangers. Some condemned the mob, others shrugged it off. In the village, elders shook their heads in sorrow, powerless to change the past. And Adaora. She returned to the grave again and again, whispering to the man she loved, "They took you from me, but they cannot erase your truth."